All right, greetings, Earth Explorers. We're going to be live in about 1.5 minutes. We'll wait for the studio to get through their commercial break. We're waiting for the other affiliates. We already have D-Live up. We're waiting on Foxhole to connect. Should connect about 2 minutes after. Hopefully we have video tonight. Lots and lots of Foxhole people out there. Checking the chat room. We already have people coming in. Let's see here. We were not on Sunday night. We ran a rebroadcast, so we did not run our video feed because we were at the Patriot Voice event in Dallas, Texas. But we are live tonight. All notifications should be going out. Oh, there we go. Now everything seems to be online. All right, this is good. Tony, welcome. Start pouring in now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring Revolution Radio in, and we will start our audio feed out to TalkStream Live.
According to the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years. We are free with the God given right, and we shall not give that right to any power on earth. Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in studio feed at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Hour number 1, here we go. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We are streaming from the America Free Radio studios through Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, and we are streaming out through 6 additional platforms. We are streaming through YouTube, Twitter, DLive, Twitch, Facebook, and yes, Foxhole tonight. We are live on Foxhole, and the chat room is filling up. Welcome, Kelly. What is it? Dodie Dan? That's pretty cool. And others coming in there, and our chat room everywhere else. YouTube, DLive, Twitch, everything is consolidated on one screen over here. So my right eye will be watching that one. My left eye will be watching this one, and welcome to the program. This is where the past meets the future, and here the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. You put things in the chat room, I like them, I'll respond. Of course, Top Chat is working on YouTube, and from there you can give donations to the North Pole Inner Earth Expedition. So please make yourself available to that all night. And yeah, Foxhole is cool. That's right. Life of Brian says Foxhole is cool. That's right. It is a comfortable place, and we're glad to have you. We love the Foxhole people. And we have lots of friends over there. Patriot News. We have Alara of Sirius. It's 1 foot in 5D. We have Loyal to the Foil and Red Pill 78 and others. They do a really, really fine job over there. All right, let's get started. We have a lot of stuff to go over. People wonder sometimes, when you go in anesthesia and they actually, put your brain to sleep. You're out. You have no feeling at all. And a new study recently showed some understandings about brain rebooting, or how one can regain consciousness following being in a coma or anesthetized or in a deep sleep. A Science Alert report said that one may well have spent many hours wondering what his laptop could probably be taking a lot of time in booting up, and now researchers have asked a similar question of the human brain. Specifically, they asked, how exactly does a human brain, start up again? How does it get going again following anesthetization, being in a comatose or in real deep sleep? Well, involving a group of 30 healthy adult individuals who got anesthetized for 3 hours and another group of 30 healthy adults who were not, as a control measure, this new research showed how the brain is dragging itself back into consciousness. I mean, some people are not conscious that they're conscious, so it doesn't work. But these are assuming people that are normally conscious. Anyway, the research shows some understandings about brain reboot, or how one can regain consciousness following this kind of flatlining of the brain. And as a result of the study, recovery of consciousness and cognition, being aware, like, where am I? After general anesthesia in humans was published in eLife. And it appears that the brain is switching back on one section at a time instead of all at once. And abstract problem-solving abilities, as controlled by the prefrontal cortex, that's here, are the functions that return online the fastest. They're the first thing to come online. Other areas of the brain, which include those handling reaction time, attention, they take longer. The University of Pennsylvania anesthesiologist Max Kais said, even though it was surprising at first, it makes sense in terms of evolution that higher cognition needs early recovery. Thank you so much, Freedom, for that generous donation in Top Chat. He says, video game controller throws a face-down tantrum in between the words rage, quit. That's right, exactly right. I'm thinking more like, 3/4 of a bottle of scotch while playing cards. And then the game is over, you lay down on the lazy boy, and poof, you're gone. And then sometime the next morning, and usually it's pretty early for some weird reason, you wake up, you kick the foot support down on the lazy boy, and before you stand up, the prefrontal cortex kicks in and reminds you have to go to the bathroom. And that's how the brain reboots. See? Problem solved, right? Anyway, there are various methods used in the study. Medical Express specified in a similar report, various methods were employed to measure the occurrence in the brain, comprising EEG, or an electroencephalogram. These scans pick up the cognitive ability of the brain, the electrical reaction in different areas of the brain. And they said the test measured memory, recall, speed, and other skills. I wonder if they tested, like different methods of passing out, like different drugs and different amounts of time that they were under, and maybe they were not all that swift before they went under. I don't know. But analyzing the scan readings, the study authors noted that the brain's frontal regions, where functions like memory, problem solving, motor control are located, turned out to be specifically active as the brain started recovering. I would think that would be like, the control, the operating system, the CPU. It would have to be, located right here. It's like, okay, now you come on. All right, no more slurring speech. You're going to speak straight now, and you're going to stand up straight without wobbling. And it's like the maestro of the brain. But the areas of the brain, the actual gray matter itself that handles different things in the brain. Speech is handled over here on the left side. Songs are over here on the right side. Different memories are stored in different places for the normal brain, because they've done deep brain stimulation and have been able to stimulate those things that have been dormant for a long time, memories that have been not voiced or remembered or recalled for a long time. They're stored, but they're just not accessible. And that's the normal brain. But, some people are able to take their frontal cortex and in meditation or concentration or practice are able to link different parts of the brain to do different things. Let me give you an example. A stroke victim who, say, has an aneurysm over here on the left side and cuts off blood flow to the left side of the brain for a couple of hours, and that side of the brain goes to sleep forever, and you lose the power of speech. Many stroke victims go through this. They also might lose a little bit of vision in their right eye or the use of their right hand. And the strange thing in it is that through therapy, many of these stroke victims can reteach other parts of the brain to do the things that right hand, right foot, right eye, and even speech were doing before. And I've known people that have had strokes before, mini strokes, regular strokes, before were brilliant stand-up teachers in quality or in engineering. And then I met them several years later and actually booked them to come in and train some of my people. They had all the knowledge, but they couldn't get the speech out clearly. They had a slur, a Biden slur, that they couldn't get past. And you could tell he was trying. You could tell he'd been through therapy. And it was, for the most part, we could understand what he was saying, but we did have to accommodate his lack of ability to enunciate the words. So this can be done after a stroke. And I maintain, and there's never been a brain study done on this, but then there aren't very many brains like that. There's never been a study on someone who's been able to, before a stroke or without a stroke, patch these different sides of the brain together to do different things, to create redundancies, or even better, to create, well, let's call it transitory relationships. I was going to say interdependencies, but that's not really correct. It's more like, music stimulates mathematics and chemistry stimulates poetry. Things that you would normally think are stored in different parts of the brain are actually quite similar, and they can be cross-pollinated with practice from one part of the brain to another part of the brain, and thus the brain becomes more engaged as a total operating system. It's said that when the autopsy was done on Einstein, that his brain, the actual shape of his brain was highly convoluted. He had a lot of, deep crevices all over his brain, and that the average brain is much smoother, has less morphology to it. And they're thinking that maybe this physical arrangement of the gray matter in his head is what helped make him such an incredible genius. And that could be, but nobody wants to have their head cracked open to see, do you have deep crevices in your brain? No, and there are some ways of scanning the brain. Mine's been scanned about probably 15 times, 16 times, because when I was killed on the motorcycle, they did a CAT scan, which is one time. But then when I had cancer, I had to take sugar-laced isotopes, which will go to active parts of the body, like your brain and other areas, lymph nodes, if they're lit up by activity. And then what happens is when you have a positron electron tomography, it's called a PET scan, these areas, because they have the isotopes in them, will show very detailed morphology in this kind of layered scan. And you can roll your mouse literally right through slices of the body and look at everything inside the bones, the muscles, every one of your glands, and even your brain. And so I was curious to see those scans. I saw them all myself and scrolled through them several times. It's pretty packed in there. There's not enough room for, emptiness. I don't know about convolutions, but I could just tell you that this can be done. And I think I could teach people how to do it. Washington University, which I have a lot of respect for, anesthesiologist Michael Avidan said the new study suggests that the healthy human brain is resilient even with extended exposure to deep anesthesia. He added, this denotes that some of the cognition disorders frequently seen for days or even seek during recovery from surgery and anesthesia, like delirium for one, or what would be called disorientation or loss of balance, vertigo, that kind of thing. It can go on for quite some time, 1 or 2 weeks. Many surgical procedures simply would not be possible minus the anesthesia. I hope not. An effective and controlled method of shutting consciousness in the brain, an occurrence that can take place in the incident of a coma. Despite their prevalent use, the researchers don't actually understand how anesthetics are working in exact detail. Even if they have already figured out how to safely use them, they don't really know how they work. They don't know why the brain goes to sleep and yet the body, keeps functioning. The heart keeps beating, lungs keep working, unless they have to put you on a ventilator because you're so out that you wouldn't breathe on your own. And there are lots of ideas how the brain is dealing with such drugs, although no solid evidence yet. And it's kind of crazy because here we are in 2021. We should have some solid evidence. So a lot of people want to know about what happened down in Dallas. I will give you bits and pieces of it if you want to know specifics. I will tell you this: General Mike Flynn is the nicest guy. He is military all the way. He is terribly focused, and he is perhaps too focused in the sense that he's not very well balanced on his feet and ready for political questions or political action. He can be taken off guard quite, as we have seen. So, but Sidney Powell was way nicer and way more genuine in person than she is on the TV. She can be really intense when the camera's in her face, but when you're standing next to her and just talking, she's incredibly brilliant, affable, and communicates directly with you, not past you. All right, I want to bring this up because a lot of you might be a little young to remember this because it happened in 2013. Our U.S. missile defense system has been systematically taken apart and has been under attack of late. You will recall the disassembly of the U.S. missile defense system by Obama in 2013. On January 15th, 2013, the Air Force informed Excelis. Excelis is the defense contractor who was running the TARS sites. TARS stands for Tethered Array Radar System. They're they're similar to like uh, World War II barrage balloons. They look like a little blimp, maybe 50 feet long, and they have a steel cable on them, and they have a power cable, and they're filled with helium, and they're raised up to 15,000 feet up on a tether, cabled to the ground. And they sort of lead into the wind with their tail pointed in one direction toward the wind. And on board is a generator or a converter that takes the power that's going up that cable, and a radar system. And the radar system is over the horizon because it's 15,000 feet up. It's able to look way over the horizon and give us early warning of what is going to maybe come at us at low altitude over the horizon. And this was taken apart. Excellus tried to then negotiate with the Department of Homeland Security to see if they could, take over the Vital project, but those negotiations failed. And Obama dismantled the entire system, which meant that on the southern coast of Florida, or the Gulf Coast of Florida, and part of Alabama, where these TARS systems were utilized, we lost our ability to look over the horizon on the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is a critical body of water for a couple of reasons. One is, we've been drilling oil in the Gulf of Mexico for a long time, like since the early 20th century. And out in the Gulf of Mexico, abandoned, there are some 20,000, that's a lot, 20,000 oil rigs. Some are operational, but most of the platforms are just sitting there, and they haven't gone out and salvaged them and taken them out. Well, what does this do? It creates, for all intents and purposes, a metal cover or jungle in which a small submarine can hide. The only way that we can detect submarines is from space if they're near the surface. If they're not near the surface, if they're down deep, say 1,000 feet, we can't see them from space. We can't detect them, especially if they're sitting quiet. And if they're sitting quiet with oil rigs around them, we can't see them at all. Now, the dangerous thing about this, of course, is that they can't communicate with the surface when they're 1,000 feet down, so they have orders. They're going to stay the clock, stay till a certain date, and they're going to wait for orders. Now, how do the orders get to them? Well, it's difficult to get them to them because they have to come to the surface, extend an antenna, get their orders, and then go back down again. And they have to do that in between satellite swings. And the satellite goes over every 2 hours, so you don't have much time to get up, get your message, and get back down again. They are missile submarines, and they are capable of launching missiles from under the water. North Koreans and Chinese and Russians all have this ability. So you ask yourself the question, what would happen if there was a Chinese submarine sitting in the Gulf of Mexico that's missile capable for a month or a month and a half, just sitting there doing nothing? And the TAR system's been taken down, so they're sitting there 30, 40 miles off the coast, well over the horizon, can't see anything. And they decide to launch a cruise missile. Well, the cruise missile bursts through the surface. It's launched to the surface with a gas charge inside the sub. So the missile goes to the surface, pops through, the fins pop out, the rocket lights up. It kind of goes up, and then it settles down against the ocean as the wings begin to support it, and it takes off at low altitude at subsonic speeds between 300 and 500 miles an hour, but close to the ground. Really close to the ground. Why? Because radar cannot pick them up. Now, if the TAR system was in place, we would see the candlelight. We would see that missile like 200 miles away, which would give us enough time to respond and get a missile defense into position. But because we don't have the ability to look over the horizon, we can only see about 10 miles. And at 500 miles an hour, 10 miles doesn't take very long at all. It takes about 1 minute. 1 minute. And if they launch that cruise missile and they're able to get it past that initial coastal detection system. That missile, if it's launched at, say, 1 or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody's even going to know it's here until it hits St. Louis. 1,200 miles that thing can travel against the ground at 500 miles an hour in the middle of the night. No one's going to report it because what they're going to see is, or hear is some jet going by at 500 miles an hour. Wow, they're doing maneuvers now. They would never think about a cruise missile. That cruise missile could make it all the way to the heartland before we would know it. And they would probably launch more than one. So with this missile defense system out of the way since 2013, that's 8 years, we're vulnerable. Now, speaking on condition of anonymity, one Excelis employee had this to say about the announced closure of the TARS sites. This is from the contractor that built the system. Not only will this closure mean hundreds of people will be out of jobs, but it will also mean our borders will not be safe, especially among the remote U.S.-Mexico border like in Texas. These defense radars detect low-flying aircraft infiltrating our borders. Without these defense radars, low-flying aircraft will go undetected. It will be open season for any drug, gun, slave smugglers, terrorists flying in with nukes, low-altitude missiles, or even a full-scale, low-elevation invasion attack against America, close quote. This is serious stuff. Serious stuff that was done against the country, against the United States of America by the commander-in-chief. Yes, I agree. Eric Milner in the chat room says Chinese are already in Mexico and Panama. I got news for you. The Chinese are in every single state. They're in every single agency, department, bureau, and administration. They're in most major universities. And they're working very closely to the president's cabinet. It's way worse than anybody thinks. According to the Air Force's website, the tethered aerostat radar system is an aerostat-borne surveillance program. Using the aerostat as a stationary airborne platform for a surveillance radar, the system is capable of detecting low-flying aircraft at the radar's minimum range by mitigating curvature of the Earth and terrain masking limitations. TARS provides a detection and monitoring capability along the United States-Mexico border, the Florida Straits, and a portion of the Caribbean in support of the Department of Defense counter-drug program. By the way, the system was fully funded. They weren't saving money. We weren't saving tax dollars. It was fully funded, and he took it down. Now, there has been a large and unexplained explosion near the Cape Cod Air Force Station's PAVE Pause ICBM early warning radar station. This is a big deal. This is at Sagamore, Massachusetts, which is Cape Cod, East Coast, okay? A large fire is presently burning there. The system has been incapacitated. PAVE Pause stands for Precision Acquisition Vehicle Entry Phased Array Warning System, okay? Phased array. The explosion was so large, and this is a radar facility, folks. There's really nothing flammable there. The explosion was so large that workers over 2 miles away heard it. One worker reports, when I looked outside, the sky was filled with gray and orange smoke, just like that explosion that destroyed the port of Beirut, Lebanon. There is nothing actually at the remote radar station that is explosive other than a transformer that supplies the power for the antenna. Why is this story important, you ask? Why am I bringing this to your attention? Well, it ties into several things. That's what we do here at this program. We connect dots, and we analyze, and we bring you that analysis and let you make your own decisions. Well, you see, Cape Cod Air Force Station is the only land-based radar site providing missile warning for the entire east coast of the United States and southern Canada against intercontinental and sea-launched ballistic missiles. That means anybody can now sneak into the bay or up a river that's about 4 minutes away from Washington, D.C., and launch cruise missiles or rockets at the northeastern United States, and we cannot see them. They will be able to wind their way along rivers or railroads and hit their targets in the dead of night, and our warning system would not be able to see them coming. Now, perched high atop Flat Rock Hill, near the quiet Massachusetts town of Sandwich, Massachusetts, is this radar station. It's a remote pyramid-shaped facility. It takes up about 100 acres. And it is the home to the Air Force Space Command's 6th Missile Warning Squadron. The radar looms 10 stories high against the backdrop of New England's rolling hills. There are 200 people who man the radar. And to date, they track sea-launched ballistic missiles heading for North America. Now, they also use the radar to track satellites in orbit. It transmits space track data into the Space Surveillance Center at Cheyenne Mountain. At the operational heart of the Cape Cod facility is the Missile Warning Operations Center, where what's called AFSpace.com, or AFSpace.com, I'm sorry. And the Canadian crews monitor consoles around the clock which display tracking data. Well, not no more. If the continental United States were to be attacked, this would be the radar that you would want to take out. If you subscribe to my newsletter, which is totally free, by the way, and I don't ask for a lot of personal information, name, email address, that's it. I will send you this article, and you can see this map of where this is located and how vulnerable it leaves us. We're talking from the east coast of the Yucatan all the way up to Nova Scotia. That's where this radar system can detect. It should be pointed, by the way, it's not over the horizon, so it's fairly high altitude once it gets past the Cape. It should be pointed out that there's no structure or facility large enough to burn like that, at least within a mile of the radar, so this had to be some kind of explosive that took it out. External explosive. Somebody bombed it. And it's beginning to appear that it was an effort by an adversary to take out our early warning radar. And they missed. If that guess is correct, we may have just avoided a first strike by an adversary who plans to take us out. They're implying, I think, through the news release that maybe this ability survived. So you better not shoot anything at us because we're going to see it coming, and then we're going to counterstrike because we got stuff right off your coast. That's basically what they're saying. Do you believe it? Are you buying it? I'm just asking in the chat rooms, do you buy it? Do you think that the radar is still active, that we can still see everything that we could see before? I mean, if so, I think they're going to try again, right? If this was their goal to take it out, I think they're going to try and hit it again. So, here's what you should do. And we say this often, and had you been listening to us, Texas, other places, you would not have had any problem this last winter. You need to prepare. One of the things that became, well, I will say this, of the 1,000 patriots that were at the Patriot Voice event in Dallas, Texas over Memorial Day weekend, which was this last weekend, I would say about half of them realized that something is wrong, that Virtual Joe has lost his mind, that he is no more commander-in-chief or president of the United States than I am. In fact, I may be more capable of being president of the United States than him. He's not running the country. He's not awake long enough. He's not capable of making decisions to run the country. Someone else, something else is running the country. They're aware of that. But the other half are quite aware that we may quite possibly be at war already. We've already been hit. We've already been hit with the made-for-TV virus. Now, it wasn't much. It turned out not to be much. They thought it was going to be way worse than it was because it affected them, but it didn't affect us that way. Because everybody knows this. Every average virologist knows this, and every world-class virologist sure as hell knows it. Once a virus gets into a human body, it dies. It goes into the cells of the human body, and it relies upon the human body to be the factory, They build the DNA and build the new macrophages, and out the virus goes into the body, and it reinfects over and over and over again, and you're shedding, and you're breathing, and you're sweating, and you're rubbing. That virus is going everywhere until your immune system says, you know what, I don't think you belong here. And that is destroyed by the body's immune system. Antibodies are built up, and it's neutralized. It takes some time for that to happen, and that's if you have a really good immune system. If you don't, you have to have some help. The point is, each time this is done, the virus loses a little bit of steam. Because viruses, well, they're either the simplest form of life or they're the most advanced. And here's why I say that. They're the smartest because they don't eat and they don't require hardly any energy to survive or to replicate. That's pretty advanced life, I think. Simplicity is the crown of genius. But they're pretty simple in the sense that they don't have any other capabilities. All they do is infect the host so that they can live. Now, if that infection turns out to be fatal, like quickly fatal, like Ebola, it can't spread. Why? Because the person is sick, because they can't get on the subway. They can't get on the airplane. They can't go to the baseball game. They can't walk around for 4 or 5 weeks infecting people because they're dead. If the virus kills its host, it's never going to propagate. This is what I'm trying to say. The beauty of this design of this virus was that it was not deadly at all. About 99.89% of the people walked away from this with nothing more than a nasty cold or a chest cold. Some had no symptoms at all. Most had no symptoms at all. But it spread quickly. And it wasn't the disease itself. It was the test. It was the test that kept making the news. You remember all the spikes they talked about? The spikes in Charlotte, the spikes in Jacksonville, the spikes in at this Trump rally in Tulsa. Those spikes, they're not spikes of cases. They're spikes of positive testing. And you know what people wouldn't do? They wouldn't stop testing. They kept testing. And when you test for something, you're going to find it. You can imagine a disease so deadly that you have to be tested to see if you have it. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. So what really became the part of the war was the lockdown. Thank you so much, Life of Brian. Very generous of you in Top Chat. Thank you. He says, COVID-19 was spoken into existence. Stop talking about it. It dies. Yes, exactly. But you can't do that because the Global Syndicate, if you listen to this program very much, you know what the Global Syndicate is. If you read my book, Charm of Favor, you know what the Global Syndicate is. It is a 4-pillar organization. It has been around for millennia. It is structured. It consists of a military end, a political end, a financial end, and a media end. All right, so in our day, the military end is the CCP. They're the ones that are developing the weapons. They're the ones that are being the aggressors. And, of course, they're helping Iran destabilize the Middle East. But it's China. It's China everywhere. It's China in India. It's China in South Africa. It's China in South America. It's China in America, okay? It's China. It's the CCP. The political end is what I call the Establishment Party. The Establishment Party consists of all the Democrats and a fair amount of the Republicans. It also encompasses parties in other countries like Israel and Germany and England. Yes, the Establishment Party is enormous. And the third is the financial end, which is basically at the core is the IMF and the World Bank. These are the two most corrupt financial organizations in the history of the world. And they have been trying for a long time, for decades, to destroy the American dollar. And they've got a leg up on it right now. With Janet Yellen in the U.S. Treasury, they and Virtual Joe in the White House, They are dismantling the American dollar as we speak. Your dollar in January is going to be worth 80 cents come this December, come Christmas. 1 year, it's going to drop 20% in value. Yeah, it's happening. And the fourth, and probably right now maybe even the most powerful arm of the global syndicate, is media. They have been able to consolidate media down into 6 rich white guys. 6 rich white guys control all the press in the world. Michael Bloomberg, it used to be Murdoch, but other owners of these major press outlets, both cable and satellite and radio, are all owned by 6 white guys. And then you add the 3 tech giants on top of that. You add Google, Facebook, and Twitter on top of that, and Google controls YouTube, and Facebook controls Snapchat. So when you pull all those together, you now have control over the town square. I said to the bloggers that were down there were 6 of them featured. There was the Kate Awakening, there was Jordan Sather, there was Red Pill 78, there was Brian Evans, there was a couple of others that have good followings, had great followings on YouTube and were smashed, but managed to bounce back on other media. So they were up there on the stage, and I was privileged to be able to talk to them for about 2 minutes before everyone, 1,000 people there. And I said, listen, contrary to popular belief, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube lists are not social media. You are. And of course, the whole place applauded, but I was getting to my question. I said, my question is this. How are you going to save us, inform us during the 10 days of darkness? Those of you that are awake, and you have seen this movement. By the way, Old Dog, very generous. Thank you so much on Top Chat. He says, support the cause. Absolutely. By the way, all the money that goes in here goes straight into the North Pole Inner Earth expedition, okay? None of it goes into my pocket. I don't spend any of it. We invest it in stuff we know is going to grow, because we're trying to get to a goal, which is we are trying to get to $60,000, and we're not there yet. I put in 25. It's now up to about $26,000. And then all the listeners have put in the rest. Once we get to $60,000, then we're going to hire the GoFundMe company. The first $30,000 goes for the initial GoFundMe campaign, and then the second $30,000 covers the marketing on top of that. We all believe, with the 40 million fans that we have globally, with the North Pole Inner Earth expedition, I have the link up there right now. You can go to it and check it out, that we can reach them with a GoFundMe campaign if we market it correctly. And, of course, it takes millions and millions of email addresses to do this. And these companies have those, but they cost money to access. It's just the nature of the business. And so once that's done, we're going to raise the $1.5 million it takes for the deposit on the ship. The ship will be chartered, and then next March of 2022, we will pay the remaining amount on the contract, and then in August of 2022, 100 scientists and 25 staffers, filmmakers, record keepers, and satellite experts are going to head for the Arctic Circle for 15 days, roughest seas on the planet, and break ice for a week to get to an area of the Arctic Ocean that we believe might contain an opening in the crust between the two oceans. If we find it, well, we could win the Nobel Prize, but there certainly will be a lot of PhDs generated on that boat that day. You get to see it. You get to see everything we see because you can join it. You don't have to get on the ship and barf your guts up for 15 days. No, but you can join us by pay-per-view, and it's cheap. It starts at like $10 and goes up to $49, unless you want to come with us. We do have 5 spots that we will give to premium investors who put in $25,000 each. You match me, and you 5 get to go. I wouldn't do it because this is not going to be a pleasure cruise. This is going to be tough. It's going to be fascinating, But it's, we've been to Everest a bunch of times. We've never been here. This has never been seen before. If you're that guy, if you're that adventurer, get to that website and sign up, because those 5 seats, they're going to go fast. They are going to go fast. And then there's no more, because we're not taking a bunch of rich tourists with us. We're taking scientists. Get there, check it out, and then we can talk on the boat. So I need you to prepare emergency food, water, medicines you need to live. If you're on blood pressure medicine, you should have a 3-month supply on hand at all times. Your pharmacy will get them to you, okay? Don't run out of your blood pressure medicine and die, because that stuff's dirt cheap. $20, $30 a month can save your life. Get the 3 months supply. Same thing with insulin, although that's a little harder to do. Trump was driving the price down, but I understand it's headed right back up where it was. Have a way to generate emergency electricity. It could be a solar panel, could be a hand generator. It doesn't have to be much, just a little bit. And then you need to make sure your vehicles are topped off all the time. If you drive to work and come home, gas up every other day. Just keep the tank full. You saw what happened. You saw what happened when the gas line was hacked. All right, the Colonial Line went right smack through the middle of Trump country. And all those people ended up, carpooling it for a while. It was hard on everybody. And it could have been worse. It was only an electronic attack. It could have been a physical attack. You need to have battery-operated radios. That means don't put your batteries in the radio. A radio is a great place to store dead batteries, so don't do that. Keep your batteries separate. I would highly recommend, I've done it myself, I highly recommend buying a CB radio. Okay? You could buy a Cobra, you could buy a Uniden, they're cheap. They only got 5 watts. Buy a radio, keep it in the box, and buy an antenna, by the way, too. You have to buy an antenna with the little cord and the connector that goes to the radio. Don't hook it up. You don't need it. It connects to a car battery or your motorcycle battery or a converter, a 12-volt converter. But you will need that radio, because that might be the only way we can communicate for a while. Because we're talking about 10 days of darkness here. And you may wish to grab some cheap, walkie-talkies. So in case you get separated or you need to go somewhere, you can stay in communication with each other, especially family members. You can use ham radios, but I don't recommend it, because you got to be licensed. If there's a lot of atmospheric interference, they won't work at all. And not very many people have them. Everybody has CBs, and every trucker has a CB, and you can find out what's going on. Yes, Life of Brian, satellite radios would work, but who has an extra $1,250 laying around for a satellite radio? I'm just saying, you can listen, but you can't talk. Cheap radios, you can just listen. Yes, sunspots and CMEs raise hell with the CB, I know, but they will work pretty close. They'll work within a couple miles, and that may be all you need, like, hey, they're moving over here or they're moving over there. You see, there's something wrong with what has taken place. And even at this convention this last weekend, about only half the people got it. The rest of them were there, rah, let's get Trump back in office. Join the reality, people. Local news media is absolutely silent about what I'm talking about. You're only going to hear about it here. You're going to hear about it on Foxhole, and Patriot News, and Red Pill Project, and White Hat, and Salty Cracker, and even X22 Report. You're going to hear about it there, but these are small audiences. They're like ours. We have, 10, 20,000 listeners, and maybe that many listen to the archive if we're lucky. And that's until YouTube, takes us off, or Twitter blocks us, or Facebook, smashes us, or kills our account. And the word has to get out with you. You have to talk to your friends. You have to talk to your neighbors and your family. You need to tell them, look, I know you don't see planes flying overhead, and you don't see tanks rolling down the street. You don't see soldiers, blocking things off and herding people around, or rail cars showing up. But that's not that kind of war yet. The war is very real, and they're fighting it the way they know how to fight it. It's asymmetric. So gold, for all its wonderful uses, it isn't usually abundant in Earth's upper layers. So it's very rare, it's expensive, and it drives men crazy. Yeah, it does. It drives men crazy. You can get killed for it. I recommend silver. I should have brought a silver bar down so I could show you. The prices go up and down a little bit, a couple dollars here and there, but it wasn't really that worried me. What really worried me was availability, because I normally buy from one of the big outlets like Johnson Matthey or Silvertown or something like that, but they have stores on eBay, and they offer free shipping. But up until just a couple of weeks ago, that shipping was like 6 weeks. You weren't going to get it because they didn't have it. Now they have it in stock, and you can get it in about 7 to 10 days. It's reasonable. It's reasonable. So if you have cash laying around in a cigar box or in your checking account especially, if you've got $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 laying in your checking account and you're debt-free, you know as well as I do that money's not doing you any good. It's just sitting there making no money at all. And if the bank decided, you know what, counterfeiting's a big problem, isn't it? I think we could close the bank for a few days and you can come get your money next month. You see, your cash is in their hands. Your debit card could be hacked and gone or held hostage just like that. If they can hold a pipeline hostage, if they can hack an election, what would make you think they couldn't hack, Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Morgan Stanley? They could. And that's why you need the silver in your hands. Because if you have to grab that silver, a couple of guns and a bug out bag and walk or get on your bicycle and ride to your daughter's house 40 miles away, it's going to take you a while because you're not used to riding that far. It might take you a couple days. But when you get there, you'll have money. You'll have assets. This is what the wealthy did in 1929. In 1928, the wealthy began moving their money into assets. Real estate, steamships, gold, silver, jewels. They moved their money into assets. And when they crashed the money supply, these guys were fine. They were fine. They were debt-free. They'd sold all their stocks. They had plenty of money. And when the prices dropped, which is what a depression is, they just took their money, went right back out to the market, and bought stuff. They bought city blocks for $10. They bought factories and railroads and ships and airplanes. They bought stuff dirt cheap. And they got ready for World War II, which is basically just the 30 Years' War Part 2. So I recommend silver because it's accessible to the average person. If you can get gold, fine. But if you carry gold around, it's dangerous. And silver has other properties. By the way, that's a very good point. Chad Christian Erickson in the YouTube chat room says, like the Romans, cut the silver coins into silvers to trade proportionally to the trade so you don't have to give a full coin for a loaf of bread. And there are other capabilities that the Romans had as well. They would put a silver coin in a barrel of water. And the silver has an antibacterial component to it that keeps bacteria from growing in the water. They did it at sea. So what does this look like? Well, we have about 4 minutes left in this hour, and this is going to continue on through Revolution Radio's break. And I so appreciate the people in Foxhole. Awake Ann is out there, and Wired Wrong is out there, and Kelly's out there, and great stuff. He says, let's see. Says, my insulin is $325 a bottle. See, that's a crime. That juice should not be that expensive. It should be like $20 a bottle. Somebody's making a huge amount of profit on that Awake Can. I think it's a crime. I think it's a dirty, rotten crime. If you take a couple of bottles of juice a month, that's $650 a month without insurance. That's a lot of money. Most people, can't get off the hip for that. If they miss a month, you die. It's just simple as that. And thank you very much, Kelly. She said it's blessed to be here, and I appreciate that very much. 1 foot in 5D is awesome. We love Hilar. She does a fantastic job. She puts her heart and soul into this. The war on America, the Department of Homeland Security, a couple of days ago, issued a new warning bulletin. If you haven't heard it, you need to listen closely. It alerts Americans that domestic extremists may well use violence on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre. This was at least the fourth such bulletin issued this year by Homeland Security, warning of the same danger, and thus far, none of the fears it is trying to instill into the American people has materialized. You see what's going on here, right? You know what the Tulsa race massacre was, right? It was a racial massacre that occurred 100 years ago. It would never happen today. It would never happen today. It's just not possible. What they're trying to do is start a war. They're trying to get us, the armed Americans, to take action. And the first warning came out January 14th. Numerous federal agencies, including the DHS, about violence in Washington, D.C., and all 50 state capitals that was likely to explode in protest of Inauguration Day. That didn't happen. Then came a January 27th bulletin warning of a heightened threat environment across the United States that is likely to persist over the coming weeks from ideologically motivated violent extremists, white people, with objections to the exercise of governmental authority. That never materialized. Then there was the May 14th bulletin, warning of right-wing violence to attack higher capacity targets, exacerbated by the lifting of COVID lockdowns, which also never happened. And now we are treated to this new DHS warning about domestic extremists preparing violent attacks over Tulsa. Like, I don't think I've ever thought about Tulsa in my life. Just like the first war on terror, these threats are issued with absolutely no specificity at all, right? What's a war on terror? It might as well be a war on indigestion. It might as well be a war on anger, on bad attitudes, on PMS. You see, there's no specific target. If you raise your voice to a government official who's trying to take your house away, you see, that's terrorism. They're just generalized warnings designed to put people in fear about their fellow citizens and to justify aggressive deployment of military and law enforcement officers in D.C. and in your neighborhood. A CNN article which wildly hyped the latest danger bulletin about domestic extremists. By the way, you know what they were calling our Patriot Voice event in Dallas over the weekend? Wonderful, wonderful songs and camaraderie and patriot love and patriot togetherness. You know what they called it? They called it a QAnon conference. I was there every minute of the day and night. The word QAnon was never mentioned. Never mentioned. Anon was never mentioned. I'm just telling you, it's all hype. Everything is hype. We'll take the quick break with Revolution Radio, and we'll be right back after this. Just relax a little bit, and we'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came and unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us. Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio, 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 radio.
All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Line up to unmute myself, wouldn't it? All right, thanks so much for going through that break with me. You know, where this war against America is so subtle, it's so asymmetric, it's kind of taking us by surprise. And the soldiers on both sides of this war, I think, are also surprised that they have unwittingly been enlisted. Just like the first war on terror, as I said, these threats are issued with virtually no specificity. And Americans have seen this scam before. Throughout the first War on Terror, DHS, which was created in 2002, was frequently used to keep fear levels high and thus foster support for draconian government powers through the Patriot Act of spying, detention, internal war. And prior to the DHS's creation, its first secretary, who was Tom Ridge, if you remember, from New Mexico, when he was still the White House's Homeland Security chief in early 2002, he created an elaborate color-coding warning system. You remember that? Like we're on orange alert, we're on yellow alert. In 2004, Ridge admitted that he had repeatedly been pressured by Bush officials to elevate the warnings and threat levels for political gain and to keep the population in fear. He claims that he, in particular, was coerced against his will to raise the threat level just prior to the 2004 presidential election and resigned it for a reason shortly thereafter. DHS's color scheme became the brunt of endless jokes and derision. It concluded a 2007 scholarly study in the journal International Security, noting that it became perceived as being politically motivated, largely due to the complete lack of information and evidence. Moreover, its designers assumed that the population would trust the national leadership and believe in the utility, and they didn't. And though Obama scrapped the unpopular color-coded system in 2011, he, in a classic Obama gesture, merely replaced it with an equally vague and fear-generating bureaucratic alternative that was also subject to political manipulation. National security writers like Lawfare ultimately acknowledged that, like the Bush-Ridge system, there were no clear triggers for alerts under Obama's new scheme. So the system remained objective, and it remained opaque. Obama would wake up in the morning, open his shell of his soft-boiled egg, look at the list of victims that were to be killed that day. He would check off the names to be droned, hand it to the military courier, and off they would go to kill a handful of people, including Americans. And then, depending on how he felt after breakfast, the color-coded system would change. You see, fear is crucial for state authority. That's why we teach about love, and we teach about higher frequency, we teach about awareness, and we teach about meditation. We teach absence of fear because fear is driven by ignorance. Fear is driven by attachment to physical things that are threatened to be taken away from you. That's what it's driven by. And it leads to the dark side, so Yoda would say. But when fear is lacking, citizens are going to crave liberty more than control. And that is when they question official claims and actions. And when that starts to happen, when the public feels like it's safe to go outside now, it's safe to go back to the ball field, institutions of authority will reflexively find new ways, like elevated, what they call a coronavirus spike in the coronavirus deadly pandemic, to ensure they stay engulfed by fear and thus quiescent. Now, I saw firsthand how this dynamic functions when doing the Snowden-enabled reporting on mass domestic NSA surveillance under the Obama administration. You see, by the time the stories broke, and we were on top of it, I think we were active in 2011, very active. We began in 2005, well before a lot of these bloggers, even got out of grade school. After the killing of Osama bin Laden, and as a result, anger over Obama's sprawling domestic surveillance program was pervasive, and it was bipartisan. People did not like it. They didn't like it one bit. It wasn't so much that the common person was being surveilled, your metadata was being collected, but Angela Merkel was being spied on. Senators were being spied on. Congressmen were being. This was verboten. This was not good. and they rebelled against it. So a bill jointly sponsored by Justin Amash, who was a Republican from Michigan, and John Conyers, who was a Democrat from Michigan, which, by the way, got caught more than once walking around his congressional quarters in his underwear with his female staff around. They eventually made him resign. But anyway, it would have reined in the NSA's domestic buying powers, and it was on its way to an easy bipartisan victory as a result of that anger over the NSA spying. But here's what happened. You might recall, if you go back and listen to the archives, but the Obama White House convinced Nancy Pelosi to whip enough Democrat votes to ensure its defeat and save NSA domestic spying from reform. But the momentum which the bill had would have been the first since 9/11 to roll back rather than expand government powers, along with the anti-surveillance and pro-privacy polling data, proved how significantly the playing field had shifted as a result of those revelations, and especially the reduction in fear levels experienced by Americans. We were no longer afraid. We were pissed. But shortly thereafter, a new group, you remember when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, after they killed Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, and then in 2012, they sacrificed Chris Stevens and all the individuals at Benghazi and spirited all the missiles, rockets, and grenades out of Libya that once belonged to the president and took them to Syria and built a new military force called ISIS. They emerged and amalgamated with Al-Qaeda. It had a 2-year stint with middling success in scaring Americans, but it was sufficient to turn back the tide of pro-privacy sentiment. And at one point in 2014, the U.S. intelligence community claimed out of nowhere that a Syria-based group that virtually nobody in the U.S. had ever heard of previously, before or since, called the Khorasan Group, was a more direct and imminent threat to the United States. Never happened. Never materialized. They disappeared like a fart in a whirlwind. After ISIS's star turn in the role of existential threat, the Democrats, during the 2016 campaign, went back to the old playbook, the Russian playbook. And they went after Putin and the Kremlin, and to that role, abandoning without explanation Obama's 8-year argument that Russia was merely a regional power. Many people thought that Russia was just a gas station posing as a country. This revolving carousel of scary villains ensured that by the pressure that they could exert to reduce the powers and secrecy of the U.S. security state eroded in the name of staying safe. So this is the war that we're in. And you know what? I don't know about you, but I'm fatigued, right? I'm worn out. I feel like I have walked all winter. I have walked all spring. I've carried a heavy pack, a heavy burden. I've watched my P's and Q's. I wore my mask when I had to. I took vitamin C and vitamin D, and I'm taking fenbendazole. Yeah, they scared the crap out of me. I'm in my mid-60s. I could kill me. Sure, it could. But it didn't. I got it. I got over it. I said, wow, it wasn't that bad. I've had flus way worse than that. Now my body's chock full of antibodies, and I'm immune. And so are about 150 million other Americans without the vaccine. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. They should be ashamed. Beyond the DHS bulletins, that agency and other intelligence operatives continue to issue reports every day, every other day, every week. And they're worse, and they're better, and they're worse, and they're better. And they're just, as Life of Brian says, they're mentally and physically wearing us down. But that's why you got to listen to this program, because there's always hope here. Always hope. We're not going to lose. And by the way, you need to come to the realization that we have never won a war. We've only won battles. We've only won battles. For the last 246 years, the global syndicate has been trying to destroy America because we're the last bastion of freedom and liberty on the earth. Sometimes they get ahead and sometimes they don't, but they never, ever, ever surrender. And that is when wars are over. Wars are only over when the other side surrenders, but they never have. They've taken a rest. They let their soldiers get wiped out. They let their people get nuked. But then they come back. Another decade. They infiltrated our schools. Now they've trained 2 generations of our kids to be their soldiers. And now you see what's going on. Objections to the new powers that have been vested in the U.S. Secretary or Security State in the name of fighting domestic terrorism are met with still greater scorn today than they ever have been. But what are we going to do about it? Every time we make a move, they call us terrorists. Every time we gather together, they call us insurrectionists. Every time we air our voice on social media, they call us disruptors. They call us, calling for violence. And we're not. We're calling for persistence, not resistance. Resistance is where you sit down and scream in the middle of the street. Persistence is where you keep walking forward. And if you oppose new anti-terrorism legislation for use on you, or are deeply concerned about the invocation of civil liberties destroying weapons such as no-fly lists, or these little mini drones that are facial assassins, or online censorship, and heightened domestic surveillance, then it is assumed that you must support domestic extremists. Yeah? Well, I'm extremely patriotic. I'm extremely faithful. I'm extremely loving. And that's not scary. It is a shoddy, anti-intellectual, and deceitful tactic, to be sure. But it is now commonplace. It's everywhere. When I resigned my membership at Planet Fitness because I refused to wear a mask, and they said, well, you can just resign your membership. I said, son, I've been working here for 10 years. I've been working here since you were in grade school, working out here. And you're going to tell me that I have to resign my membership because I won't wear a mask. He said, that's exactly what I'm saying. I said, pull it up. Let's sign it. You know, it only took him about 15 seconds to pull that up, flip that screen around for me to sign it. I could tell he'd done it a lot. He knew exactly how to do it. I signed it with my finger, and I flipped my scanner badge down on the table, and I said, I am a free American, and you will not put me in solitary confinement, just like you have all of them. And I pointed to all the people on the exercise bikes and elliptical machines, and I walked out. And I've been exercising on my own ever since. I'm a little pudgier for it, but you know what? I'm free. I'm free. I oppose this new domestic war on terror, and I oppose all those new powers and secrecy authorities that go with it. Okay? It merely requires a basic knowledge, which you can get here on this program, of recent U.S. history and how these powers are invariably used by the secretive U.S. security state when government-generated fears lead to their widespread enactment. And they will, all the way down to your local village. The dangers of the first war on terror were grave enough. You saw it. You were there. Transferring it to the homeland, as President Biden calls it, is bound to be way more dangerous still. He doesn't know what he's doing. He can barely keep from crapping his suit. So be persistent. Keep walking forward. Quick story, where's the beef? You've heard this story. JBS's 5 biggest beef plants in the U.S., which altogether handle 22,500 cattle a day, halted processing following a weekend attack on the Brazilian company's computer networks. According to JBS posts on Facebook, labor unions and employees, those outages wiped out nearly a fifth of America's production. Slaughter operations across Australia were also down, according to a trade group, and one of Canada's largest beef plants was idled. The prospect of more extensive shutdowns, don't you find this strange? That Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals would come out and say, we need you to stop eating beef because they are farting too much, and we're going to switch you over to these virtual beef burgers, which are, I don't know, some kind of GMO spinach bullshit, and we're going to shove that down your neck, and you're going to like it with ketchup. And I'm not. I'm an Angus beef guy. And I'm sure you are too. In the U.S., JBS accounts for about a quarter of all the beef capacity and roughly a fifth of all the pork capacity. The company's backup servers were not affected, and it is actively working with an incident response firm to restore its systems as soon as possible. Despite the fact that JBS accounts for about 20% of our processing production here in Australia, they said, we're not expecting there to be any significant impacts on exports so long as this isn't a protracted shutdown. His name is Little Proud. That's a very cool Aussie name. We're also working with JBS right here in Australia to make sure that we can get some limited capacity up and going in the next couple of days. JBS has been very proactive in that, close quote. Meanwhile, the White House said Tuesday that Russia was likely the origin of the cyber attack and has called on Moscow to punish the burger hackers responsible. Can you believe it? I'm not laughing because it's too stupid to laugh at. JBS notified the administration that the ransom demand came from a criminal organization likely based in Russia. Oh, I don't know. They had Russian accents. Sounded like it to me. What do I know? White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said, according to The Hill. The White House is engaging directly with the Russian government on this matter and delivering the message that responsible states do not harbor ransomware criminals. Wow. It's got CIA written all over it. Don't you think? Don't you think? In the chat room, yes? Clowns, right? These are clowns going after our burgers. That's hitting home, baby. That is hitting home. We're assessing any impacts on supply, and the president has directed the administration to determine what we can do to mitigate any impacts as they may become necessary. In other words, eat them veggie burgers, boys. Yeah. Sorry, mate. Sorry about that. By the way, we're not out of burgers. You are. All right. Dark matter maps. This was our lead story for tonight. I kind of got sidetracked on other things, but long weekend, a lot of yelling out in the crowd. Woo! It was good. A new map of dark matter made using artificial intelligence reveals hidden filaments of the invisible stuff bridging galaxies. The map focuses on the local universe, the neighborhood surrounding the Milky Way. Despite being close by, the local universe is difficult to map because it's chock full of complex structures that are actually made of physical matter. We have to reverse engineer to know where dark matter is by looking at galaxies, because we all know that gravity, the force of gravity decreases with the square of the distance, right? So galaxies are a long way apart, like hundreds of millions of light years apart. And so when we do the math, we realize that It doesn't even have enough gravity to tilt this water in a glass. Okay? Not much. It's just not much gravity there because it's too far away. And yet, the two, I've said my hands closer together, the two galaxies are rotating in a force that is combining the two galaxies together. And so the theoretical physicists that like to think about such things realize that there's got to be some matter missing. There has to be some mass missing from what we can see in order for galaxies to behave that way. So they created, in this mathematical model, dark matter. Now, they're trying their hardest to detect it, but it's kind of like, you know, as Michio Kaku says, it's kind of like being in a fish in a pond. And you're swimming around in the pond universe, which is liquid, and you're breathing and happy and perfectly fine as long as people throw fish food in the water. But you realize that up there against the surface where the water ends, there's another universe made of air. Now, you can't detect it, you can't see it, you can't walk in it, you don't have any evidence of it. And yet when it rains in the air universe, you can see the water striking the surface of your pond universe. You can see the ripples, the interaction between the two universes. And we can too. So we're making that leap of logic by saying there has to be this dark matter. Now, it could not be dark at all. It could be very bright, and we're just not very bright, and we can't see it, so we call it dark matter. Dark matter is a mysterious, invisible substance that interacts with visible matter via gravity. It's very large. It has to be, to make the equations balance. Some researchers theorize that this invisible matter might consist of weakly interacting massive particles, or what are called WIMPs, which would be very large, for subatomic particles anyway, and electromagnetically neutral, like a neutron. They don't have any charge on them, so they're not going to interact with anything on the electromagnetic spectrum, such as light or electrons or protons. And another idea with some potential evidence to back it up is that dark matter might consist of ultralight particles called axions. Whatever dark matter is, its effects are detectable in the gravitational forces permeating the universe. So they mapped this out in models, and they realized that when you map this out, it's an invisible gravitational force, and it isn't easy to do. But what they're looking to do is duplicate the behavior that we think we see, because obviously we haven't been looking at galaxies for a long time on this level. We have only been looking at it for way less than 100 years, probably less than 60 years, seriously. And that's not a very long snapshot of the universe. You really need like 60 million years to look at the universe moving like that. So we're greatly extrapolating. Yes, we understand that. But typically researchers do this by running these large computer simulations. They start with a model of the early universe, and then they fast forward to the billions of years to now. And what they do is they work through possibilities. We're all about possibilities in the physics world. Possibilities that will create the conditions that we see today. So we're using a philosophical principle in science. We call this catastrophism or humanism. They're opposing viewpoints. Humanism believes that the forces that are working on the universe today are the same forces that have always worked on it. And so we can take a little picture of a snapshot of today, and we can just extrapolate that a gazillion times backwards and see what the universe used to look like. It's sort of like if I put this glass of water under the kitchen sink, and the kitchen sink was dripping into it, and I could count the number of drops per minute. We know that 20 average drops is 1 milliliter. So we could measure the volume in this glass, divide it by 20, and tell how many minutes this glass has been sitting under the faucet, right? That's humanism. The same forces that are working on the glass now have been working on it since it was dry and put in the sink. Catastrophism believes that you put the glass in the sink, turn the faucet on, filled it up to this point, shut it off, and left it dripping, and it's actually only been there 30 seconds, just outside of your observation. So catastrophism refutes this humanistic philosophical approach that we can take small examples of today. We can guess what the universe used to look like at the very beginning, and then we can piece all the pieces together until we get what we see now. Because it negates all that. It leaves out catastrophes, things like interactions of human consciousness, God, another universe passing through, you see? And the new study takes a different approach. The researchers first trained a machine learning program on thousands of computer simulations of visible matter and dark matter in the local universe. And then this machine learning works on probabilities, and it's a technique that is particularly adept at picking out patterns from large data sets. The model universes in the study came from a sophisticated set of simulations called Illustris TNG. You may have heard of it. I don't know. If you're in the business, some of this, I'm a statistician, and we don't use this very much because we can collect all the data that we need from the floor. We collect all the data, all the variations, or all the attributes, we call them, and then we do an analysis of their range and their standard deviation, and we calculate what's called a CPK or a PPK, which is an indice that tells us if our process is in control and if it's in specification. You can't do that with space because you can't take the samples. So after testing the machine learning algorithm training on a second set of Illustris TNG universe simulations for accuracy, the researchers applied it to real-world data. They used the Cosmic Flows 3 galaxy catalog, which holds the data on the distribution and movement of the visible matter within 200 megaparsecs, or 6.5 billion light years of the Milky Way. And that area includes more than 17,000 galaxies. So I'm probably going to put this in my newsletter, which you can get for free. Easy to do. Just use the links right down here. Go to brooksagnew.com, or you can go to americafreeradio.com and sign up for my free newsletter. Comes out twice a week. Once on Wednesday, once on Sunday. Free. That means it don't cost nothing. And I will send out these quality research articles that I use. I will leave the links live in them so you can do your own advanced research if you want, and some of my listeners do that. So the result of their efforts was a new map of dark matter in the local universe and its relationship to visible matter. Matter we can see, we can detect either infrared or visible or ultraviolet. Now the result is promising. The machine learning algorithm reproduced much of what was already known or suspected about the Milky Way's neighborhood from cosmological simulations, but it also suggested new features, including, and this will make you electric universe people very excited, including long filaments of dark matter that connect the galaxies around the Milky Way to it and to one another. This is very important for understanding how galaxies will move over time. For example, the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxies are expected to crash into each other in about 4.5 billion years, and understanding local dark matter's role in that collision could help address more precisely how and when that merger and others are going to occur. And now that we know the distribution of the dark matter, we can calculate more actively and accurately the acceleration that will move the galaxies around us. By acceleration, we mean gravity, even though we're not saying gravity. Because when we talk about acceleration, we're talking about gravity. Gravity here on this planet, we are accelerating at this very moment. I'm sure you are, at the rate of 32 feet per second per second. Fortunately, I'm being held up by this chair and this floor, and I'm not actually falling. I'm stopped in my fall, but I am, technically speaking, accelerating toward the center of the earth. Same thing with galaxies. This is what we're talking about. It is gravity, but we're treating it in terms of acceleration. So it's a cool article if you want to read more up on it. It appeared a few days ago in Astrophysical Journal. I like to read this stuff. I don't know if you do or not, but I like reporting on it, and I hope if you'll just give me a thumbs up in the chat room that you like hearing about this stuff, because nobody else covers it, and I have the wherewithal to do it, so I'm going to do it, and if you like it, that's great. If you don't, well, it's my program, so it pretty much sucks. Let's see what's going on in Foxhole really quick before I go to the next story. Yes, I did say a war on PMS, and I mean, that's what the war on terror is, right? It's just vague like that. It's like vague. Thanks for the stream tonight. Love what you're saying, and that comes from Dodie Dana. Okay, my D-Live listeners, if you have been in the chat room in D-Live, you know that I have loaded 150 plus lemons into the vault, and I am going to distribute them right now. So we're going to find out in about 25 seconds who the 5 lucky listeners are who are in D-Live. I do this on Wednesday and Sunday. I just give away lemons. Lemons are the form of cryptocurrency in D-Live. It's real money. You can link it to your bank account, and you can withdraw it eventually if you want to. It takes a lot of lemons to make a Mercedes-Benz, but you get the picture, okay? It's a cryptocurrency. And I give it away because I appreciate my listeners being there, and they support me with their patronage. So here are the 5 lucky winners. Steve Y62, 54.1. What a haul. And Old Dog, 31.5. Storms Up, 23. Big D, 1955. That was the year of my birthday, too. 18.5. And Kehoe, 15.6. Nice haul, guys. Very nice haul. That goes in the bank. In the bank. And it's good karma. It's just good karma. I don't know how to do it in Foxhole. I haven't learned yet. I'm just new. I'm new to the community, so be easy on me, okay? I know we got to buy gold pills, and I haven't figured it out yet, so just don't be rough on me. All right, this story. I don't know about this story. Yeah, I think I'm going to share it with you because Black Lives Matter is a serious issue, and they're so rich, and they're so powerful, and they're so intertwined in the establishment party and in the global media empire. Leaders of the radical Black Lives Matter movement in America recently have been shown to have some extreme opinions, including co-founder Patrisse Cullors. By the way, she recently resigned because she's already made her money. She's already bought 4 homes with money she pilfered from Black Lives Matter. And no, none of the homes are in black neighborhoods. They're all in gated white communities. And a statement from Alicia Garza, who's another co-founder, as she quoted Mao Zedong, the Chinese communist tyrant who was blamed for killing some 45 million people over the 4 years of his Great Leap Forward. Now, the post-millennial is reporting another leader of that movement whose name is Bree Newsom. This is a name you need to make yourself familiar with because she's a we used to say you need to hold on to the bone longer than any other dog, right? And eventually the other dogs will fall off and you'll end up with the bone. Well, that's Bree Newsom. And she wants authorities to hand out land titles as reparations. Oh, no. You don't know the worst of it yet. You see, she wrote on Twitter this week that crimes committed by the ancestors of white people are the reason that those white descendants should now be forced to pay the descendants of victims. And I have said many times, I'm not involved in it. I came here hundreds of years after that happened. But by God, let's just write the check. What do you say? Let's just write the check. Let's write the check. Get it over with. Write the check. Pay this off and remove it from the table. Well, you know that's not what's going to happen. Those who have benefited from the gains of white criminals' past, she posits, should not be able to use those assets if they are currently in possession of them. Yeah, it's amazing, she says, how white people commit atrocities in one generation and then they just disappear from existence. No descendants, no names, no current wealth or land holdings that can be identified as a result of the atrocity. Only black survivors exist with living memory, apparently. Well, the report said her idea is that those who still have the land that belonged to their forefathers should relinquish it to the descendants of those who had been harmed by the racist past practices. Newsom basically believes that children are responsible for the sins of their parents. We cannot have Jeff Bezos having hundreds of billions of dollars. That cannot happen anymore. We cannot have someone like Donald Trump inherit wealth and then become the president of the United States just because he inherited wealth. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, here's the thing. Bree. The thing is, Donald Trump's not a dumbass. He's not a rich dumbass. He's a smart, tall, fearless leader. And he started with $1 million, which he had to pay back, by the way. He had to pay it back. That cannot happen anymore, she says. That's what they're going to be most resistant to. They'll give us a little cash. They don't have a problem with giving us a little cash if they have to. Her land claims also have appeared in the past. The United States of America owes us more than they can pay. The reality is modern white civilization, we're talking the past half millennia, 500 years, is built upon black enslavement. The thing I caution against is allowing the white establishment to go through a process where they feel they paid reparations to us, but they're still continuing to feed from us and build their civilization on our degradation. President Biden actually has announced a plan to look at reparations, and Oakland, California, and Evanston, Illinois have adopted their own reparations plan on a limited scale. Imagine that. And Gateway Pundit called Newsom and others calling for reparations stone-cold Marxists intent on destroying this country. Interestingly, Fox reported this week that Rashad Turner, who started a BLM chapter in St. Paul, Minnesota, has released a video revealing the group's ugly truth. He said that when he was in the ranks, I quote, "I believe the organization stood for exactly what the name implies. Black lives do matter. However, after a year on the inside, I learned that they have little concern for rebuilding black families." Close quote. He said BLM cares little about the education of students in Minneapolis in an appearance on Fox and Friends first Wednesday. "When you call for a moratorium on charter schools," he said, "that is a direct attack on black families, on black children." It was the National Pulse that dug up the video of Garza invoking Mao's deadly perspectives while outlining her organization's effort to transform democracy and take power. She was delivering a speech called "How Black Power Aims to Transform Democracy" at the Personal Democracy Forum in 2016. At the Facebook-sponsored event, she cited the need for a new political order and noted BLM's internal fight, stating, "We too are navigating the tension between allowing 1,000 followers to bloom at the same time distinguishing between what are flowers and what are in fact weeds. that threaten to consume the entire ecosystem. Like Patrice Collier's. The report said that referred to Mao's 100 Flowers campaign, which he infamously announced with the following rationale. I quote, "The policy of letting 100 flowers bloom and 100 schools of thought contend is designed to promote the flourishing of the arts and the progress of science." Close quote. The National Pulse previously uncovered the video clip of Collier's that dates back to 2015. She's appearing on a panel called Globalizing Ferguson, Radicalized Policing and International Resistance, which was organized by Harvard's Human Rights Program. She said, "Palestine is our generation's South Africa, and if we don't step up boldly and courageously to end the imperialist project that's called Israel, we're doomed." Close quote. And now you know the core of Black Lives Matter. Just a little something to pay close attention to. Let's see what else I got. I have another China story, but I think we're getting pretty close to the end of the program, so I think I just want to talk to you for 15 minutes if I can. No notes, just you and me. Is that okay with you? Can I do that? Let me clear all this and just open up the chat rooms all the way so I can see everything everyone is saying. You know, the last 3 months have been quite amazing from February to now. We've watched something happen in our country we never thought would be possible. When I was a little kid, we used to do radiation drills. You know, we would drop and roll under our desk like that would save us from some Soviet missile coming over and blowing up and, you know, vaporizing our school. But somehow our desk would save us. We would be okay. We would come out and everything would be okay. And when I went in the Air Force in 1973, damned, we didn't go through the same training. There we were, stationed at Grand Forks, North Dakota. Missile Silo Central. We were the number 1 and number 2 targets of the Soviet missile program. Oh, they would bring us into Air Force Now and say, look, this isn't a big base, and I know it's flat land, and, you know, we're right up against the Canadian border, but we're number 1. They're going to dig these missiles out of the ground before we get a chance to shoot them off. And when they do, the fallout and the blast will be horrendous because we're going to get hit with megaton after megaton after megaton. But this base right here, we could take 2 direct hits, and here's how you survive it. And they gave us training, how to stay inside for 3 weeks, how to, filter our water, and how to take baths. And somehow they had the younger of us, or the youngest of us in that room, convinced, like we were in grade school, that we could stop, drop, and roll, and our little desk would save us from a hydrogen bomb blowing up down on P Street on the south side of the base. And here we are in 2021. Those attacks never happened. No one ever launched against us. We never shot anything down. President Reagan was brilliant. He said, you know, we've got great technology. We're going to build a SDI. We're going to build a strategic defense initiative. And it's going to be made of these simple trucks with mirrors on them. We can put them in space, and then we're going to have these powerful ground-based lasers. And if you shoot a missile at us, we'll be able to direct those lasers anywhere we want and toast that thing out of the heavens before it ever turns back down toward Earth. It'll take your numbers game, 99.5% accurate, and make it impossible to calculate. And here's the thing, Mr. Gorbachev. If we get a missile off, you're going to die. We called it mutually assured destruction. And you know what the Soviets did? They tried to match us. Oh, they spent like crazy. They developed technology. They scanned the heavens. They couldn't find anything. Wow, that stuff is so stealthy. Even we can't detect it because it wasn't there. It was all fake. What it did, it forced the Soviets to spend so much of their gross national product to try to keep up with a missile defense system we didn't even have, that it broke them. It broke them. They were unable to manage all the states that they had taken over after World War II. And Kazakhstan and Estonia and Latvia and Poland, they all broke off and became independent states. And their leadership stepped forward. They accessed the capital markets, they raised money, they started developing their own resources, and they grew independent. And the Soviet Union was no more. The wall was no more. And yet somehow we have managed to believe that these people are able to market Russia as the Soviet Union. It's not possible. I'm telling you, Russia is a gas station posing as a country. They are unable to do anything militarily except defend themselves. They're going to be quite good at that. What they're really trying to do is build a second gas pipeline. It's called NS2, Nord Stream 2. It's going generally along the same path of the other pipeline, down the Norwegian fjords, under the water, and to Germany. And it's going to increase the amount of natural gas that Russia, through its plethora of natural gas resources, can supply to Europe. Now think about this, Earth Explorers. Just give me a couple minutes to explain this to you. If Russia is the source of energy, clean, cheap, plentiful, reliable energy, why would NATO ever go to war with Russia? It wouldn't happen. All Russia would have to do is just squeeze off that valve, shut Europe down, and that would be the end of that. Russia is a trading partner of Europe. They're not an enemy of Europe. Kazakhstan is one of the biggest territories, but they're also one of the poorest because they don't have enough resources to develop all their resources. They've sold off entire oil fields to the Chinese because they can't afford to buy the equipment to develop the fields. I know this. I know this because I have partners that did it. And then you take the Ukraine, which is a part of Russia, has been since 1760. They're in war games with Russia right now, 100 miles from the Ukrainian border. They're not enemies of Russia. They're not enemies of Russia. Russia's not going to invade Ukraine. It doesn't have to. Russia has Russians living in Ukraine. All this is fabricated. All this is made up by the global syndicate to make us afraid. And when we can't get marshaled to fight that enemy, they're going to make us the enemy. You see, Donald Trump is not the enemy. They don't hate Donald Trump. They hate us. And Donald Trump is standing in between them and us. And so he has to be moved out of the way. And he was. And I don't know if Donald Trump's ever coming back. I highly doubt if he does. I think Rick DeSantis is going to be the next president of the United States, to tell you the truth. I don't think Virtual Joe's ever going to get off the ground. He can barely get an hour or two a day, and then he's got to go down again. Too busy crapping his pants. And Kamala Harris, forget about it. She'll be sued out of existence as incapable and ineligible to be president. You watch. We have a month. I'm going to develop it. It's not ready yet. But when Arizona turns, and Pennsylvania turns, and Georgia turns, it's over. Virtual Joe's administration is over. And then you have to ask the question, then what? Then what? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to explain Sunday night. I can't do it tonight. We only have a couple minutes left. You hang on, because everybody, including the people I was with down there in Dallas, 1,000 people, and all of these well-informed leaders in the America First movement, they want to know too. I know what's going to happen. Then what? We'll get into it. Listen, this is America Free Radio. We'll always be here. I don't need the money. I don't need any money from this at all. Everything we make goes directly to the expedition plus some. I make my own money. I'm happy with it. Buy my books. I'm totally pleased with that. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew. And I'm saying, peace, Earth Explorers. Peace. Now go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you'll save the planet. This is how it's done. Don't resist. Persist. Keep walking forward. And we'll see you Sunday night at 8 o'clock right here on America Free Radio. We'll be broadcasting through the Truth Frequency Radio Network that night, plus YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Twitter, and Foxhole, and Facebook, and where every archive is stored on Odyssey. So if you miss something, you can't find it on YouTube, go to Odyssey. It'll be there. Be good, Earth Explorers. This is Brooks Agnew signing off with the Revolution Radio Network. Go get 'em. Actually, I might have signed off about 2 minutes too early, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll address a couple things in the chat room. Old Dog says, keep up the fight. After 12 years of fighting, my wife finally got her U.S. citizenship today. Yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about. Friday, I sold my Shadow 1100. I owned it for 16 years. I was happy with it. I sold it. I got a good price out of it. And an hour later, I went down to the Harley dealership and bought my first Harley Davidson. My birthday present to me. Happy birthday to me. So, my money, my dream. It's my last motorcycle. I'll keep it with me forever. And thanks very much for the appreciation in Foxhole, everything in the chat room. This is super, super fine. Keep up the good work, Patriots. Never give up. Keep moving forward and hold the line. See you Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Who's out there? Oh, Chad says, congrats. Bushi Bonton says, happy birthday. Thank you so much. Chad Christian Erickson says, wear a helmet. Always do. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for one. I had a 35-mile-an-hour DOT helmet when I destroyed that Hyundai with my head. It worked. It worked. I survived. It killed me, but I came back. It's all right. Chad says, onward and upwards. May not always be upwards. We might need a Foxhole over here, Foxhole, which, by the way, the guys at Methods and Pilled or Pilled.net is doing a fantastic job. If you need to get over there and sign up for that, lots and lots of good live feeds there. All right, I have to let you go now. I think I can hear the music in the background. And I think I have some Rocky Road ice cream with my name on it. I deserve it. I mean, my birthday lasts for 4 days, okay? This is what we do every year. And all my kids are born in June. So next weekend, we have all the kids' birthdays all at one time. Yeah, we grill out, we ride motorcycles, we play in the water. It's a big deal. You could see the Agnew clan birthday from space. It's awesome. All right, guys, there we go. See you Sunday night.
Thank you for listening to